The Coolermaster MM712 is one of my favorite mice. So much so that I've always kind of wanted to do a video on it, but older mice really don't bring in views, which is why I was very excited to find out that Coolermaster has finally released an updated version in the MM712. The King of Claw has returned. During the beginning of the lightweight mouse craze, a lot of companies were trying to rush to market with a lightweight mouse with decent PTFE skates and a decent paracorded cable. Coolermaster was one of the first companies to announce their version of a lightweight mouse at Computex in 2019. That mouse was the MM710. And since then, we haven't really heard much. They've released other mice, but for reasons I'll get into a bit later, people have been very patiently waiting for a successor to the very, very popular MM711. Inside the box, you get your mouse, your USB dongle, a USB dongle extender, a really nice cable, which they're calling their Ultra Weave cable, and a really nice set of grips. Specifically looking at this Ultra Weave cable, the MM710 released with what was considered an industry best cable at the time. And you can tell that that philosophy has really been passed on to this mouse. Now, your cable might not necessarily mean too much to you being it's a wireless mouse, but you can use it if you need to plane charge, and it's actually a usable cable. When it comes to wireless mice, sometimes companies tend to let that slack as they're a wireless mouse, but in this case, it really is a phenomenal cable. And right out of the box, I love the feeling of this mouse. As I've mentioned, the MM711 is one of my favorite shapes of all time. It's a shape that really got me into the idea of using smaller mice, and I was really impressed to see that the quality has basically done nothing but improve. It's only gotten better. I would have expected the quality of this mouse to come from the likes of Razer or Logitech, but more specifically those price points. It feels like a mouse that should cost $100 or $120. It really does feel that good. It measures 116 millimeters long, 62 millimeters at the grip, and 38 millimeters high at the back. Now, if you aren't familiar with this mouse, it's got a really big back end. Shorter than most of the ambi shapes you might be used to, this mouse is for the serious claw grip enthusiast. Coolermaster states that it can also be used for palm grip, and while I don't doubt that, with 19 by 9 centimeter hands, that makes it really hard for me to do, and I prefer to hold this in a stiff claw grip, allowing micro adjustments with my fingers. There are some refinements to the design itself. Gone is the hole punch design, and in its place a closed shell design that looks really fantastic. And despite having a closed shell design, this mouse weighs in at only 59 grams, which is really impressive considering that it's holding on to a lot of the features that a lot of companies have started to ditch in that search for a lighter weight. You still have RGB, you have Bluetooth connectivity, you have the 500 milliamp hour giving you 80 hours of battery life, all in a 59 gram package. While the feet are the same, the bottom has gone through some design changes. We have a DPI selector on the bottom now. It used to be on the top. We have a storage for our USB dongle that's spring-loaded, which I think is kind of neat, as well as the mode selector. And as I mentioned before, you do have the option for Bluetooth. It's not something I personally would use in my competitive FPS mouse. Mice like the Razer Naga or the G502 kind of make sense, as those make really good travel editing mice. So having Bluetooth on those types of like fully featured all around great mice makes sense. But apparently people have been loving the Bluetooth, so who am I to argue? The sensor we're getting is the Pixar 3370. This is a tried and true wireless sensor. Most flagship wireless gaming mice in the past couple of years have used the 3370. No, it isn't the most bleeding edge, newest sensor from Pixart, but it still does a bang up job, and the implementation here is great. One thing of note is the sensor placement. It's placed quite a bit higher on the mouse than the MM711. Now, while this doesn't bother me, there are people that are pretty particular about where their sensor is placed on the mouse. Some people like it towards the back, other people like it in the middle. Because it can have an effect on your sensitivity. But if it is something you're particular about and you are a fan of the MM711, you might want to keep that in note. Scroll wheel and middle click feel a little bit lighter compared to the MM711. I don't mind them. I think they feel great. But if I had to pick, I think I prefer the scroll wheel on the MM711. It just feels a little bit smoother to me, a little bit easier to click. One controversial design choice making its return is that the mouse triggers actually extend over the top of the mouse onto the sides of the mouse, leading potential to pinch your fingers. A lot of people have complained about this. Now, Coolermaster addressed this specifically in a Reddit post, stating that while in the future this might change, they wanted to stick as close to the original design as possible. Now, I personally don't mind it because my fingers sit all the way back on the mouse, so my fingers would never get pinched in this situation. On this particular mouse, I don't like it on other designs. But you should be warned, if this is something that bothered you about the MM711, it's still here. There is software here. Even if you don't like using software, I recommend at least downloading and installing it once, as my mouse had a day one firmware update, as well as this weird little feature called, I think they call it Combo. It's a feature kind of like Razer's Hypershift or Logitech's G-Shift. The problem is it caused me to accidentally change my DPI quite a few times by clicking the middle mouse button. I just turned mine off. That's what I suggest you do, just so that you don't have any accidental actuation. Now, this mouse is very specifically a claw grip mouse for me. At 116 millimeters long, it's pretty short compared to a lot of the ambidextrous shapes we see. In fact, at the time in 2019, a lot of people were really kind of sick of ambidextrous shapes or Zowie FK clones. So a lot of people were really excited to see this kind of shape make an appearance. And while it wasn't something that I was particularly interested in at the time, I picked one up anyway, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that this mouse really did change the way I play. Back then, I kind of stuck to bigger ergo mice. I was kind of scared to move away from that. As an example, there was a point where I thought the Model O might be too small for me, which I think is just so funny now looking back. And when I switched to this mouse, I found that having a shorter mouse really allowed for me to play a little quicker, a little more aggressively, as it made it really easy to make micro adjustments with my fingers within my hand, which really isn't something you can do with bigger ergo shapes in a palm grip. Back in 2019, when this mouse was released, a lot of people were excited to see a mouse that wasn't just another Zowie FK clone, but it's not 2019 anymore. Since then, we've seen actually quite a few claw grip centric mice being released. There's the Endgame Gear XM1 and its wireless counterpart. There's the Logitech G303 that's like one of the most famous claw grip mice ever. That one finally got a wireless version. There's the Pulsar X2, there's the Lamzu Atlantis. There are so many different claw grip mice out there. But a lot of them are they're still kind of big. They aren't as short as the MM712. I think having one that's really this small kind of sets it apart from something like the Lamzu Atlantis, which is actually quite a bit bigger. And another important point is that it's got a price point of $69.99, which is cheaper than even something like the Lamzu Atlantis, coming in at, I think that one's like $90. The G303 is like $120 something, I think. The Pulsar X2 I think is $119. So you're really talking about a mouse that really undercuts all of them. Now, with these QC issues, I can't really speak on them. I haven't been paying that much attention to Coolermaster, but in the past couple of weeks that I've been playing with the MM712, I've loved it. It doesn't feel like a $69.99 mouse to me. As I mentioned before, it feels more like something that would be released from like Logitech in terms of quality. I was really surprised at how sturdy and how great the mouse felt. So provided that they can keep that up, I've been trying to look for issues or Reddit posts related to potential issues with the mouse, and I really haven't seen any. After this mouse was announced, I kind of asked myself, hey, yeah, why did it take them so long? This mouse was so popular, and I've seen Coolermaster mice releases, but you would have thought it would have been a given that they would have released a wireless version of this one already. And there is a Reddit post specifically by Coolermaster that states that they thought it was important to really make sure that this mouse release went well, that they saw the kind of QC issues and firmware issues people were having, and they didn't want that to happen with a mouse that so many people loved. And I gotta respect them for that. But with the MM712, I think it's pretty apparent that Coolermaster took those issues very seriously, and they made absolute sure that they weren't going to screw this one up, and it shows in every way. I think this mouse is pretty unbeatable for the price. I think if you're looking for a claw grip mouse, I don't think you need to look much farther than the Coolermaster MM712. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not subscribed, please do so. I'm trying really hard to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're getting real close to the deadline, and I got a few hundred, I think, left. So please, if you're not subscribed, please do so. It would mean a lot. I've got a ton of different videos coming out before the end of the year. I've got a Lamzu Atlantis review that I want to do. I've got a QK60 video that I want to do, and some end of the year stuff. So I'm gonna try and start shifting to a weekly release schedule. That's kind of been hard to do in the past since I really haven't had specific things to do videos on. Like I had mentioned earlier in this video, there was a point where I was like, I kind of just want to make a video on the MM711 just because I didn't have anything else going on. So you know, now that I have kind of a backlog of things, it's kind of getting easier to sort of meet a regularly scheduled release. So stay tuned. I got big things happening in 2023. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video.